Colombian student interested in questions of law and ontology in the Amazon.
I'm Sean Seller. I'm Canadian, and I study trade theory from an ecological economics perspective.
Hi, I'm Mick. I'm Albertan, and I study ontologies as well and conceptual frameworks.
Beji Persian, I'm studying ecological economics.
I'm Emmy. I am studying law and governance questions, particularly in relation to ecological restoration and adaptive governance frameworks.
Hi, I'm Josh Sterlin. I'm Canadian. I was trained as an ecological anthropologist, and I study intercultural cosmology.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Matt, you want to say?
Yeah, where am I talking into?
Sit down. You can just talk.
Matthew Burke, postdoctoral associate with Gund Institute for Environment and Leadership for the Ecozoic.
Katie Horner, I'm a PhD student in the Plant and Soil Science Department at UVM.
Oh, hi, I'm Meg. I study ecological economics. I'm here at UVM in the Rubenstein School.
I'm Rigo. I study ecological economics here at UVM.
Hi, I'm Jolyon. I'm a natural resources student at the Rubenstein School here at UVM, and I study energy and environmental policy.
Hello, I'm John Erickson, also one of the faculty members in the program, and coordinate this program with Peter Brown.
Okay, so I think that's everybody, and I will be introducing David in just a moment. As Peter pointed out, the topic today can be depressing, ecocide, but hopefully through listening to the work that David's doing, we'll feel a bit hopeful about the ways in which ecocide can be brought to the court of law. So before I get into just a quick overview of what ecocide is, this is the plan for today's session. So we'll have a conversation with David Dean for about 1 hour, and then we'll take our usual break, and then we'll reconvene to do a mock trial, actually 2 mock trials, so 2 courtrooms, one on either side of the border, and then we'll come back together at the end of the class for a group reflection. So just to give you a quick overview of the topic for today, we're talking about ecocide. It's been a term around for a while. It was coined by a biologist named Arthur Galston, and he was actually one of the people that first discovered the defoliation components of now called Agent Orange, which was then later used in the Vietnam War. And so he came out against the use of this chemical and called upon the United Nations. And he said the United Nations would appear to be an appropriate body for the formulation of a proposal against ecocide. So it was the first time that the term was used. It literally means killing our home, side, to kill, eco, our home. Okay. Also from Cambridge Dictionary, destruction of the natural environment of an area or very great damage to it. And then good old Wikipedia gives a more robust definition. Ecocide is criminalized human activity that violates the principles of environmental justice, such as causing extensive damage or destroying ecosystems or harming the health and well-being of a species, including humans. So that's when you include the human aspect to it. So we'll be focusing a bit today on the proposal that was first put forth in 2010 by an environmental lawyer, a British woman named Polly Higgins, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year. I hope you all had a chance to view the TED Talk that I sent around. Very inspirational woman, really championed for the addition of this ecocide law to be added to the Rome Statute, which I'll explain in just a moment. But the definition that she puts forward, the legal definition of ecocide, is the extensive damage to, destruction of, or loss of ecosystems of a given territory whether by human agency or by any other causes, to such an extent that peaceful enjoyment by the inhabitants of that territory has been severely diminished. So I'm hoping that we can use this definition today when we're duking it out in the courtroom. And I think it's interesting because it includes not only harm from human activity or human-caused ecocide, but also natural catastrophes. And so basically her thinking was to create a duty of care, for the state to have a duty of care to prevent, prohibit, and preempt both types, the human-caused ecocide as well as natural catastrophes. And we can think about that now in terms of the effects of climate change with increased and more intense storms and things like that. So getting into the law a bit, I think most of you will have had a chance to read through the Rome Statute. It was an agreement that formally formed the International Criminal Court. It was actually took place over 5 weeks, a 5-week conference in Rome. And not only did it form the International Criminal Court, but it also established the court, how the court would function and the jurisdiction and structure. And so it was approved in '98. It didn't go into effect until 2002. And so within the Rome Statute, you have Article 5, which has 4 core crimes, or the crimes against peace. And those crimes are genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, which can happen during times of war or peace, and the crime of aggression. And so what's being suggested by Polly Higgins and others is that there should be a 5th crime, which would be the crime of ecocide. And so this is being termed the missing crime against peace. And it was actually included early on, some of the working groups and early drafts put forth ecocide in conjunction with genocide. And there was a draft code of crimes against the peace and security of mankind that included willful damage to the environment, which was Article 26. And unfortunately, when the final Rome Statute was decided upon, Article 26 was removed, though the environmental aspect does appear under the relationship to a war crime. But other countries, several countries around the world, here's a list, actually came out with their own domestic ecocide laws using Article 26. And so you can see a lot in Eastern Europe and Ecuador, which we read the rights to nature in their constitution in 2008, and then they put it into their criminal code in 2014. So there's still a lot of discussion about what this crime of ecocide would entail, and this idea of intent versus liability. Many, including Polly, would have said that it's actually liability that is prosecutable. And then questions around who would serve as the responsible agent when it's a corporation or company, who goes to jail, and then the extent to the destruction, when is it considered ecocide? Is, for example, is rainforest destruction, if you destroy an acre or an entire region, what constitutes ecocide? So there are some limitations to enacting ecocide within the Rome Statute, in that not all countries of the world have ratified this agreement or this treaty. United States, though it didn't sign immediately, it did sign in the early years and has since withdrawn, as has Russia. So you can see the countries in orange in the map were previous signatories, and now they've withdrawn from the treaty. And then some major countries like China, India, Indonesia have not signed on. So all the countries in red. So there's also the idea that rather than adding it to the Rome Statute and adding a 5th crime against peace, that there could actually be a transnational environmental crime that would be tried in a separate court, the International Environmental Court. And with that, I would like to introduce our guest speaker. And when I selected this photo, it went upside down accidentally, but then I thought it was appropriate. So I left it like that. But we're very fortunate today to have David Dene calling in from Almería, Spain. Is that correct, David?
Yes, that is correct. I'm in southeastern Spain.
Yeah, and he's originally from the UK, but he's been living in Spain since 1990 and actually co-developed several eco-villages there, and he's living in an eco-village now. And he spent significant time in Ecuador working with the Shuar tribal leaders, and actually went with those tribal leaders to the UN in Geneva and brought a case to the Ecuadorian Constitutional Court citing the rights of nature for the Mirador Mine project, which we read about. He's also the president of Ecocide El Rio, which is working to confront the ecocide that's happening in southern Spain, where David lives. And he's been named a world expert on Earth jurisprudence, and is part of the team with the Harmony with Nature initiative that's working to facilitate 17 sustainable goals set for 2030. So a lot of exciting projects, and David's going to talk to us today about 2 of the projects he's been working on. So the floor is yours, David. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have a screen share? Here we go. Okay. Okay, there we go. Cool. Let's do a screen share here. Alrighty. Okay, we're up. What I want to do is to go through this case which I presented to the International Tribunal for the Rights of Nature alongside COP23 in Bonn in 2017. This case, we first started working with this case in 2014. And prior to that, I've been working with Rights of Nature Europe. So I was in touch with the Ecocide group and with Polly Higgins. And in 2014, I was able to go to Stroud, meet Polly Higgins, and we presented this case on World Cafe. Time went on, we got to 2017. I've made quite a lot of noise about things. So I was given the privilege to present this to the International Tribunal for the Rights of Nature. So without further ado, as they say, let's move into this. Now, let's see if I can bring this up. Okay. So here, this is who I am. Cool. Where we are, we're surrounded by Nature 2000 protected sites. And I myself, I'm living in the Parque Natural Castanheta de Sorbas. And this is my little village here. And so we have a drone movie coming up through the village, through the main street. We're all completely off grid. There's no mains electricity, no mains water. And here's a little picture showing the aquatic life. We have these wonderful turtles which are in danger of extinction. They, of course, rely on the river. So here we have an aerial view showing this oasis and then the dry land around the oasis. Here's my house. We're going to zoom into me having a cup of coffee. Here I am sitting on my windowsill. And then here I am, and I'm just going through documents here. You can see where I live. There I am, Ecuador. Okay, next. Oh, excuse me. So we look and see actually where we are. So here we are right down here on this little southeast corner of Spain. Okay. The situation is fairly grim. You can see here the 060008 is the aquifer which supplies our river with water. We can see in 2009 to 2015 we have what's known mal estado, which is the amount of quantity of water we have. So that's in bad condition. And also we have what's going on in terms of chemical nitrates pollution, also bad state. And we see looking forward to 2015 to 21, we have the same situation. And what we can see here, it's not only our aquifer, it's most of the aquifers in Almería undergoing this problem. Here we can see this is our aquifer here, this one up in here. And you see all these red ones, these are aquifers which are overexploited. With this tribunal, we were looking at the inherent rights of Mother Earth, rights of nature. And so, of course, water being the prime source of life, well, we have and nature has a right to water as a source of life. And that water has the right to be free from contamination, pollution, toxic or radioactive waste. Here's the situation we have facing us, okay? So Sorbas is our little town here. And then Los Molinos del Río de Aguas is the spring which serves our river. When we have underexploited conditions, in other words, where we're working in a sustainable exploitation, then the water comes through down into the aquifer. Here we have the water table or the piezometric level, and it comes down to our spring here, Los Molinos del Río de Aguas, which is known as the testimonial spring or the witness spring for the condition of the aquifer. What we're seeing now are these boreholes coming down here to take the water out to the degree that the flow of water, you see, I'm just going to see if I go back, see if I can be clever. You see the flow there coming in like so, and you see the flow here. With these boreholes, we get cones of dryness, which means that the water starts flowing backwards, this way and this way. So our flow to the spring of El Río de Aguas is reduced. It unfortunately kind of gets worse because underneath the first aquifer, we have a deeper aquifer, which is now exploited. And this aquifer is radioactive. It has uranium, radon, tritium, and also we know that these boreholes are not lined, so this radioactivity is beginning to come up into the other aquifer. So in 2010, we found the drinking water in 3 municipalities was contaminated. And by 2017, we have these other villages and towns with radioactivity in their water. And right now we have 13 purification plants. And this is a very bad situation. And I have been unable to get information from the Junta de Andalucía or anybody about the level of radioactivity. The answers I get are, well, you know, it's all within the law. So I'm kind of stuck there, but this is one of the situations we face here. Here we have, in 2015, we have 4,671 hectares of irrigated olive trees taking water from the aquifer. And then we have a total of 5,500 hectares. And the large plant of this is the biggest problem, which is super intensive olives planted at 1,800 trees per hectare. So with this, we have a massive exploitation of reserves. Let me see if I can get rid of this. I've got a thing in the corner here I want to get rid of. Maybe I can't. Okay, well, you see the area here. And this is a dry zone. This is a semi-arid zone. So to be planting super intensive olives with an extraction of about 10 liters per olive per day, so taking about 60,000 tons of water out the aquifer every day, is of course extremely dangerous to our survival. Okay, here we have these zones which are protected zones for species, which relate to the Nature 2000 zones. So these are protected under directives from the European Union. Okay, so the self-explanatory. We're seeing an overexploitation of this aquifer, our aquifer, since 1998. Reading through the memoranda from the government of Andalusia, we see that they observed this first in 1998. There was a meeting between the European Union and the Junta de Andalucía in 2010, and they agreed to reduce the overexploitation from what had come up to 330% in 2010, from 100% in 1998. The agreement was by 2015 to reduce this overexploitation to just over 100%. Now we're in 2019 and we're running about 400%. Here again, I bring up the picture of the aquifer here, 060008. The table shows the subsystem, which is the aquifer, and we're running at this. I'm going to see if I can get rid of this one here. Ah, okay, that's better. At 421%. All right. Here again, we have. I'm having a bit of trouble with this. Excuse me. Let me see if I can move that up there. Are you seeing this on your screen as well, what I'm moving about?
Yes, we can see really well.
Okay, it's better if I can pop it up there.
Yeah, not when he's moving.
We don't see you moving the video window about, but we can see your slides fine.
Okay, that's cool. Alrighty, very good, very good. All right, so we see the actual overexploitation here. And we can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 aquifers in Almería province, with ours have been the most overexploited, 400%, 300%, 200%, 200%, 100%, etc. So to the tribunal, I wanted to bring information about what it was before this overexploitation. And it was fair to say that it was a land flowing with milk and honey, because we had sustainable water supplies, subsistence agriculture, springs flowing. We had farmers, subsistence farmers with honeybees, goats, pigs, chickens, rabbits, irrigated land, flowing with milk and honey. This is the source of the Río de Aguas. These tunnels you see here were dug by the Romans like 2,000 years ago. And in behind these exits, there's a tunnel running down the back wall here. It's about 100 meters long, and up, you can see the arrow up in there, another 35 meters, we have a spring. Up until this time, around about 2015, these tunnels were taking water in from the outside spring or nacimiento. The outside spring is now dry, and we are relying on water from the Roman diggings of 2,000 years ago. You can see here it's dry. Okay. Here we're looking at the drop in water, and you can see it is substantial. This is also a biodiversity hotspot. We've got unique ecosystems. We've got 17 protected habitats, endemic, rare species, and these species are threatened, and right now they are dying as a result of this overexploitation of water supplies. This is a view outside the oasis. You can see this is very definitely a semi-arid zone. Here we are inside the oasis. Now that is quite staggering. We are the last oasis in Western Europe. Spanish national TV made a 30-minute documentary, and the title of the documentary was The Last Oasis. They were brilliant. I was able to explain things well, and they also went down to the Junta Andalucia. You know, it was a good reportage. Before the overexploitation, of course, villages were created and existed because there was water. If there's no water, there's going to be no habitation. And so we had, in the 50s, 40s, 30s, 60s, 70s, there was enough water for humans and animals, no problem. In 2017, what's happening now is that the water has run out to the extent that we have drinking water supplied by trucks. In Sorbas now, it's twice weekly truck delivery, because the groundwater, the water which is available from a number of boreholes, is actually not suitable for drinking. People say, well, it gives them tummy ache, and so we're like a third world country, relying on water, buying from the shops, or being supplied by tanker to all the villages and the towns around the area. This is a view of Sorbas. This is our little town. Okay, and I've got a picture here. We're going to show the water truck coming into Sorbas. Here we go, zooming in. Here's the main street, and here's the water truck coming in. Okay, coming along up past the church. Agua de Sierra Almería. That's down in the south of Almería, on the east of Almería. This lady here, looking for the water, and she said, well, we can't drink the water from the town. It gives me tummy ache. And this is how it looks. This is a reality. Next slide, let's move along this way then. Dying villages. So in 2007, the water field in the village of Gotcha, this is about 5 or 6 kilometers north of Sorbas, is now almost deserted. We had over 100 inhabitants there, say 30, 40 years ago. Now have 14. The water system, the irrigation system, is completely dry. As it is an ecocide, moved down the Rio Aguas, we find other villages were also deprived of water. So we have High Moras 8 years ago, Mayadomo 6 years ago, and now Zoca. These are little villages and hamlets which are running above Sorbas. Here we have a picture here of Gotcha. This is the town which has been reduced to around about 4 inhabitants now. So here is Manolo. He's one of those 4 inhabitants. I'm here with the president of Group Ecologists Mediterraneo, and we're making this film actually for Arte TV. It's a German TV company. I've got a sign here. My internet connection is unstable. If you have problems, let me know. That's a vine completely dried out. Here we have an orange tree, perhaps is what it used to be, dead. And here you see, coming up here, this is a water depositor. You can see how big it was. All this land here was devoted to agriculture. And now you can see we're finished. Okay, let's go on the next slide. I took this picture. It's of a Neolithic, there are Neolithic cave paintings behind this fence. In a way, it shows the kind of attitude that the Junta de Andalusia have to nature and points which are basically of historical value. These are cave paintings inside. They're not very big, but they are cave paintings, okay? So we can see from this that there's been water flowing in this valley since Neolithic times. So any threats, and we have this 400% overexploitation threat to the river. Well, of course, they threaten both protected ecosystems and we humans. We're reliant on the corridors of biodiversity and the life-giving water supplied by the flowing water of El Rio. Just a little picture here of the little video of the turtles living in the water. Without water, of course, they're not going to be able to survive here. They're kind of quite a little family group. We're going to see a few more coming along in here in a minute or two, I think. I'm really living in quite a little paradise here. There they come. Here we go. Yeah. So that's a little shot of the flora, well, of the fauna rather. Okay. There we go. Next. There we go. All right. So Mary McGill of the Community Environment Legal Defence Fund, she put together a draft ordinance for us for Sorbas. Natural communities, ecosystems within Sorbas, but not limited to. Rivers, streams, aquifers possess the right to exist, flourish, regenerate, and naturally evolve. Beautiful words. All residents, natural communities, ecosystems, and Sorbas possess a fundamental and inalienable right to the sustainable access, use, consumption, and preservation of water drawn from natural water cycles that provide water necessary to sustain life. The right to water includes, but is not limited to, the right to be free from corporate water withdrawals. Okay. Well, unfortunately, we cannot bring that to pass, so to speak, within the legal frameworks of Spain. But the point is there, and the point is valid. Here we have a video showing what these super intensive olives look like. Here we have the irrigation lines running. Each tree is about 1 meter apart, and each tree takes about 10 liters of water per day. And we are driving along, you can see these lines and lines of trees. Here you see huge deposito, and you see the massive amount of olive trees. Remembering that we're in a semi-arid zone. This is obviously unsustainable madness purely for money. Really abuse. I think that would be the right word. Okay. We can look and see, well, what benefit is this? It's no benefit to anybody. For instance, previously here we have the situation. One man with harvesting equipment can harvest 30 tons of olives in a day. Now, previously it was 120 people who could support their families who would handpick these olives. And these olives were also given grant money by the European Union. We have a friend in the European Environmental network up there in Brussels, and Nick Maynen is his name. Nick asked me if I could get details of these concessions. I spoke to the president of GEM, Almería University, Ecologists in Action. Their reply was, yeah, I think so. Clammed up totally. What we have here is a situation of rich people with a lot of power in the community being able to close down areas of communication and information. Our main man is a man called Juan Carrion, and his family and his connections run through 250 businesses in the area, including building, transport. He has the Volvo truck franchise. He brought in friends from Madrid, politicos, etc., who bought up the land cheaply. And we assume put a little money in the pockets of those who take a little money in the pockets, and most do in Almería, a little bit like Mexico, and achieved legal permissions to grow these super intensive olives. Okay, so 2014, 2015, 2016, more exploitation, and now in 2017 and in 2019, of course, we have nearly 6 million olive trees, 6,000 tons a day. This is, of course, a disaster. Looking at Article 2, the inherent rights of Mother Earth, the right to regenerate its biocapacity, to continue its vital cycles, free from human disruptions. Well, families are displaced owing to lack of water, which I've explained a little before, and the land can no longer regenerate its biocapacity because industrial olives have produced a monoculture which covers nearly 6,000 hectares. The right not to have genetic structure modified or disrupted, well, both of those points are not observed here, because the trees are cloned, genetically modified. You have a kind of hedge formation. They're now in full production, and we probably have another 2 years full production if the situation goes on. Then there really will be no water in the aquifer, and I guess we're going to see the producers of these olives saying goodbye, leaving us with nothing, and we have been, shall we say, ecocided. Okay, loss of livelihood. The state of the Río de Aguas is in deterioration. This year in 2019, we see fragmentation of the river even within this oasis. So the corridors of biodiversity have actually been broken. In terms of problems for humans, we see Jackie Smart, who is feeding around about 60 families with clean organic vegetables. She faces displacement and loss of livelihood. And then we have Jose Lorente, caring for goats all his life. And he is faced by financial ruin, displacement, and of course, loss of livelihood. Just a little map here showing us Los Molinos here. This is where we are. And then we follow the river on down, Los Canales. This is an autopista, a motorway here. And then we go into Los Canales, and we go on down through Los Perales. And this is keeping this Nature 2000. This is the corridor of biodiversity. Now, this is Jose Lorente and his goats.
Bueno, este río es de ahora, porque hace un año. Bueno, pero el río lleva ya cientos y cientos de años. Entonces, tú no puedes quitar eso ahora. Eso no va a quitarlo ahora, no va a matar a la gente ahora. Por la gente, las plantas, la protegida por todo, porque la ves. Porque no puede vivir aquí. ¿Qué hace aquí ya? ¿De dónde toma aquí? Igual allí los molinos, igual, ¿cierto? Igual, es lo mismo, ¿cierto? Igual, todo de niño. Todo es lo mismo. Que hay muchos pozos, mucho porque hay mucho olivo y entonces necesitan mucha agua.
Si necesitan, yo creo.
Mucho olivo y el olivo necesita millones de olivos. Si hay una gota no pasa nada, pero hay que millones y durante 8 horas o yo qué sé, cuántas horas tendrán ese puesto, si es los olivos, ellos van a vivir, pero nosotros no. Los olivos sí van a vivir, pero nosotros no. Nosotros vamos a morir. Porque, ¿de dónde? ¿A dónde vamos?
Hombre, yo no sé, los altos jaros, pero aquí...
Nos vamos a quedar de comer los olivos, nos vamos allí, estamos dando ustedes de comer ahora. Si no hay agua, por las plantas.
Si no hay corazón, no hay planta, no hay comida, no hay nada.
Les desaparece. Sí. Los animales, si no hay agua, yo no muero los animales. Porque ¿dónde van a haber agua?
Sí,
¿De dónde? Pues si eso es normal, tú lo tienes que vender los animales porque no pueden beber. No hay agua.
Ni nada.
No, que hacer la muerte nuestra, que no, que hay que desaparecer. Claro, a eso ahí está. La herrería.
La herrería es el mismo problema, claro.
El mismo problema. La huelga, el mismo problema.
Y la huelga también.
Y algo que con esta agua también, sí. El mismo problema. Todas las barreras de aquí, los molinos, las canales, los perales, la herrería, la huelga.
Es casi nada.
No, es que tiene que regar con el agua esta. Si no hay agua de esta, no se riega. No, ni aquí, ni abajo en la herrería, ni la huelga.
¿Qué cantidad de tiempo tú piensas tenemos? ¿Un año más?
Pues no mucho más, ¿no? No mucho más. No mucho más. No, un año o 2 con mucho, no mucho más, porque se seca. Si le cortan el agua a donde nace, la cortan, pues se seca.
Se seca, entonces no hay vida por nosotros.
No, nosotros morimos. Nosotros de seguro morir.
Ya.
Eso está seguro.
Okay. I think Jose Lorente puts it very clearly that we really are in an ecocide. Article 2, inherent rights of Mother Earth, the right to life and to exist. Well, that is very clearly threatened. The right to be respected. Well, we're obviously not respected. We're being treated as indigenous people in the Amazon. The right to regenerate its biocapacity. Without water, well, of course, we can't do that. You know, there's no chance. Vital cycles and processes free from human disruptions. Well, we have totally human disruptions. The right to maintain identity and integrity as a distinct, self-regulated and interrelated being. With 6,000 hectares of monoculture, there's very little interrelationships happening because the land is stripped bare, sprayed. Life is being destroyed as life is in monocultures. The right to water as a source of life, the right to integral health, all these rights are being abused. Excuse me a minute, I'm just going to close the door for the doggies. Okay, back again. This is an interesting point. The national government, this is from Madrid. There is no coordination or agreement between the Directorate General for Water, the Ministry of Agriculture and Fisheries, Food and Environment, and the Provincial Council or the Ministry of Environment and Spatial Planning of the Regional Government of Andalusia to adopt emergency solutions. In their response, they leave any actions for the horizon 2022 to 2027. Well, you can see from this we have no action from the Madrid government, and they are not going to move in on the Junta de Andalucía, our local government. We look for alternative sources. So there's a desalination plant in Carboneras. It doesn't have capacity to meet our existing needs. It was due to create a larger infrastructure on phase 2. However, nobody's coming up with 57 million euros, which is necessary for the infrastructure to bring the water to our area here. This is the inland area. Also, if we look at this, the ton of water would cost around about €1 a ton. And so 60,000 euros a day for 60,000 tons, well, that's not profitable, and therefore neither Acumed, who work for the government, nor private money are prepared to invest. We are undergoing a changed climate, and we have drought affecting basically the whole of the peninsula, with massive downpours, which you may have read about as of about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We have no chance of water coming from anywhere else. This river is a part of the heritage of Almería. The area is unique in Europe. It's the last oasis in Western Europe. It's the only river in the province that has never dried up in summer months, and I would say, from what I'm seeing, we could well go dry next year. So we have seriously depleted, diminishing water resources, no planning until 2022, and there will no longer be corridors of biodiversity, maintaining ecosystems within 35,000 hectares of Nature 2000 land. This is a scandal which I came across, and I took my camera and I photographed this, and we were able to stop super intensive olives being planted here at 1,800 trees per hectare, about 800 meters from our spring, and this is within our protected zone. Unbelievable. So we're looking at a veritable ecocide, massive disregard for the rights of Mother Earth, and the continuance of the ecological cycles of the area. Point here is that without water, there can be no economic or social development. As the water levels decline, of course, the biodiversity declines. Therefore, we have a downward spiral. So we have breaks in the ecological chain of life, and the desert which surrounds us will take us over. Financial losses incurred by returning the aquifer to sustainability would impact the GDP of Almería and Andalusia. Well, I think a very important point is that financial losses that would be incurred through no action would also impact GDP of Almería and Andalusia, since all social and economic development will come to an end. The junta have known of the problem since 1998. Frameworks for control are within the power of the junta. They're noted in the 2010 memorandum. Excuse me while I quieten the dogs again. Okay. The Ombudsman could halt this overexploitation. The thing is that we don't have people taking responsibility. And we don't have any signs of solution as I wrote this, but when I finish this presentation, I can give you some better news. We have the administration now agreeing that we are overexploited. And so these points here, we are forcing the duty of action within an enforceable legal framework. And we've been able to do this by employing a lawyer from Madrid who is outside of the Almería mafia, should we call it. She's Cristina Alvarez Bacarizo. She's written a book on environmental law, and we've been able to poke the Junta de Andalucía into producing a 17-point plan since we put to them that you guys are not following the directives of Spanish law. Okay. So I'd rather hope that we would see the last of these olive harvests. They still go on. We must return the aquifer to sustainability. An idea is to have a class action. Wow, this is kind of tricky in an area where people have been abused by Franco, before Franco, and the people feel if they put their heads up, their heads are liable to be chopped off. So there's really quite a difficult situation of bringing people together to actually fight against this. As of this presentation, we were at an impasse. Now we are actually been able to move forwards. The overexploitation, as in 2017, of the aquifers of Almería was 151 cubic hectometers. That's 151 million tons. Well, finally, water is life. Rainfall is minimal, 187 liters per square meter. This was the year of 2017, and 200 liters per square meter is a desert climate. The waters from the underground reserves are what give us life. No extra reserves, no plan for developing desalinated water, and we are undergoing an irreversible ecocide. This was, we painted this on a wall of a building as people drive down the road into the olive plantations. People drive for about 5 minutes, 5–10 minutes through this. So we called it the olive man. And so we have the last of the water coming through the businessman, money coming, dollars coming out of the hands on the ground, and the result is death and destruction. This painting lasted, this graffiti lasted 9 days before it was painted out. But we have copies of this actually in the United Nations. We have copies in the University of Almería. So we had some fun with that. Here was a summary of the case at the end of the judgment of the case at the end of the tribunal. So, okay. These aquifers feed the springs and rivers that sustain unique ecological communities, as well as the communities of people who live in the area. These springs and rivers are now running dry, killing the species and ecological communities they rely on, depriving local communities of their livelihoods and driving them out of the area. The existing legal system has failed to prevent this happening, even though protected areas are being affected. This case illustrates the consequences of treating water as a commodity that can be monopolized by the wealthy instead of recognizing water as a vital source of life, which must be respected and afforded the highest level of protection. Although this case focused on the Almería area of Spain, it is an example of what is happening in many areas of the world, and the principles are universal. The fundamental principle in this case is that human societies that do not respect water as life, and which fail to take whatever measures are necessary to protect the ecological systems and cycles that generate water, destroy life, and ultimately destroy themselves. Water is priceless. Societies that sacrifice water sources for money will pay a terrible price. The tribunal found that persisting in pumping out groundwater faster than it can be replenished and depriving ancient communities of life of the flows of water that nourish them violates the rights of rivers and ecological systems of Almería, and violates the human rights of local people, including the rights of future generations. The tribunal also found that the governments of Almería and Spain, the commercial olive farmers, and others involved in the over-abstraction of this water have failed to fulfill their duties under the Universal Declaration of the Rights of Mother Earth, to respect the rights of nature and to ensure that the pursuit of human well-being contributes to the well-being of Mother Earth, now and in the future, and must take immediate action to stop the abstraction of groundwater to allow the ecosystems to recover. There we go. That is the presentation. So any comments on that? I'm going to just come back to all you.
Rico has something.
Hi, David. I have a question about so the Socialist Party ruled Andalusia for like 40 years since the Franco years in 1978, right? And now they have a new government, which is the moderate Ciudadanos. It's considered a centrist right-wing government that just started like this year after 40 years of domination of the Socialist Party. My question is, how are they? Is this gonna improve the environmental situation for your region, or how? Or is it gonna get much worse? I mean, I don't know what the dynamics are, but you might know more about it since you're there.
Okay, to address your first point, the government of Spain is in chaos. Seem to have a bit of dog trouble. The government of Spain is in chaos. At present, there is the present government doesn't have a majority, and we'll be having another general election. The government of Andalusia has changed. We have a different party in power, and we have applied for a meeting with the Director General of the Medio Ambiente and Territorial Space under our heading of Ecocide el Río de Aguas, since the government have failed to reply to our demands for information as to their following the 17-step plan for the restoration of the aquifer to sustainability. Does that answer in part your question?
Yeah, I was just curious to know if, I mean, I don't know. It just seems that there is a huge change after 40 years of the Socialist Party governing, which seem to have, I mean, Andalusia is one of the poorest regions in Spain already. So I'm sure they're trying to incentivize employment of some sort. That's how they want, they run against corruption. I remember because I was following it. They run against corruption and a bunch of things, and they were able to beat the Socialist Party. But they might, I mean, I don't know. They might want to probably double down on olive plantations, or I don't know. I'm just curious, but you're telling me that they're having answers, so I don't know.
Well, very simply, no. Very simply, no. We're in the extreme southeast corner of Spain. We have a very low population. The Madrid government is not really interested in what we're doing down here. The Andalusian government is also not very interested, so that's why we've employed a lawyer, and we are hitting them with point-by-point law. We need to avoid taking them to court, because as soon as we take them to court, then we run into a time situation where a court case can take years. So we're in a very real situation where the legal forms are not working. We have to push and shove and demand, and we have a lawyer who is enabling us to do this. And I started this case in 2014, and it's taken till 2018 with a good lawyer to actually even get a response. So we have formed a community of regantes, which is the formula. Community of regantes are community of irrigators. This provides a formula where we can demand the restoration of the aquifer. However, the formation of this community of regantes is run by Juan Carrion and the major extractors of water, who have the vested interest to keep the situation as it is. As I speak, our team are looking to get the minutes of the meeting of the formation of this community of irrigators to see if we've got some legal loopholes there in order to get the 1,200 small concessionarios, the people who have 1,200 concessions, to be able to have a vote. At the present time, we've got 19 big concessions taking the vote. Statistically speaking, We've got 1,200 concessions taking about 5 hectometers, which is sustainable. Then we have the big concessions, 19 or so, which are taking a possible amount of 43 hectometers, 43 million tons. The aquifers reserves total are 100 million tons, 100 hectometers. We're on the death list. Strong words, but that's how it is. This is the reality of undergoing an ecocide here in southern Spain with very few tools to come up against it. There are theoretical tools, there's law, but if the people who are the administrators of the law are not prepared to take on that law, then we're not going to get any action. And we are pressing, as I said, for an interview with the Director General, because we have the rights to do that. This is heavy duty, getting the job done in whatever way we can. Not theoretical, super practical. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Not good news, I'm afraid.
Anyone from McGill?
Again? Shush, baby.
Why don't we get an answer to Jeff's question?
Every dog will have its day.
Say again?
Jeff,
Every dog will have its day.
Yeah, it seems a bit like it, yeah. Okay, shall I go on to the onto my next case? You get a good idea of this first case, and it's kind of difficult. What I've done is I've put together some slides on our case in Ecuador.
Hi.
Go ahead, Josh. I think Josh had a question.
Jeff put a question here in the chat. I don't know if you can see it. I can read it out to you if you'd like.
Yeah, I'd prefer not to read it out loud because I'm in a library.
I can read it out loud if that's helpful.
Does that mean there's a showing of particular kind of intent required to establish liability? No. Well, the actual laws of what the
No, not
Josh, can you
Hello?
Sorry. Josh, can you read the question out loud? Because we can't see the question.
Sure. Jeff asked, this seems to be a case of corruption, i.e. illegal action that is overlooked, or perhaps local politicians are bought off, along with perhaps lawful activity that nonetheless is consistent with ecocide. Should this kind of case be treated differently from cases that entirely involve activity that is lawful under national or provincial or state laws, but amounts to ecocide?
Yep.
In other words, some cases of ecocide might be resolvable largely using existing laws through better enforcement, while others are not because the ecocide activity is legal under existing laws.
Yeah, okay, well, we don't have a law of ecocide. So we have to use laws which are in place in Spain. There is no law of ecocide, okay? So this kind of case has to be treated under the existing laws of Spain, as does any case in any country. If there is no law of ecocide, the case doesn't exist. What we have here is corruption throughout the whole province. Lawful? No, it's definitely not lawful. Under national or provincial or state law. What is happening does amount to an ecocide. The case we can call ecocide, this case is going up to the International Criminal Court. We made a film in order to help persuade the International Criminal Court in The Hague that ecocide needs to be criminalized, after which we have a case of ecocide. That existing, yeah, using existing laws is the only way that we can go. And actually, even that is difficult because using existing laws, we run into the time frame where right here, we don't have time to take the administration to the law courts, because by the time it gets to the law courts, they've won because they played for time. Better enforcement. We do need it. We don't get it. The activity is illegal under existing laws. I think, how do you feel about that? Not good.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think also Jeff's question was pointing to something along the lines of what about those cases where the law itself creates the damage? Instead of the law solving the problem, how about those laws that actually create or open up space for the problem to be, so the law being responsible for damage.
Okay, well, within that framework, all these olive plantations, they are legally sanctioned. They have permissions. These permissions have been granted by the Junta de Andalucía, the government of Andalusia, who's been passing a little money into people's pockets, because here we are in a semi-arid zone, and of course this is totally unsustainable. That's the problem. That's the problem. This is a similar place to Mexico. It's very clear and very easy to see it here. The corruption is evident everywhere. And this makes it quite a challenge. And also, it's a small case. And therefore, it's easy to pinpoint a kind of diamond bright case. It's clear. And it is an ecocide. And what do we do about it? Okay, what do? We make a film. We send this up to the International Criminal Court and we say, here's an example. This needs to be sorted. We need to have ecocide criminalized. So it is. Any comments?
David, this is John from University of Vermont.
Hi, John.
If this were a genocide, would it be any different under international law, or would the national government, national sovereignty also sort of sidestep all of this?
Well, if it was a genocide, then we would be working under criminal law. We'd be able to start a case saying this is a case of genocide under international criminal law. Do something about it. But
okay.
I mean, ecocide is not criminalized.
No, I understand, but the Rome Statute is strong enough that genocide would be tried in this case.
We presume so, because we do see this around the world. We do see cases of genocide brought up to the ICC, and we see people convicted. It's certainly a deterrent to people committing genocide.
So there have to be a way to, under current international law, there have to be a way to connect to loss of human life.
Well, if you're genocide, yeah, because genocide is about human beings. Ecocide is about the destruction of the environment, which potentially causes war. Yeah, okay, John.
But now I'm trying to make the link from ecocide to genocide, though. So ecocide is a cause of genocide. If it's the loss of human life, then you can kind of go through that avenue.
I think basically this is why Polly chose the Statute of Rome, because the Statute of Rome was set up to prevent the occurrence of war.
Yeah.
And war creates genocide. So yeah, I get your linkage. I think the linkage is valid, and this is how Polly brought this in to be included in the Statute of Rome, because it is part of the principle of when we have a situation which causes war, then we have death and potential killing of indigenous people. Right?
I have a question, if I may, and this could be either for David or for Maya. Could you explain a little bit more the context of the original connection between war and ecocide? And
that's going to be Maya.
Whether there's anything there that we can still build from what is it about the specific situation of war and war making that is or ought to be now connected to ecological destruction?
So I think in the original drafts, and it took a long time for the Rome Statute to be voted on and come to be, but they considered it, and that's why it is partly there, but it's not explicit in the case, like this example that David's sharing. So, yeah, so it originally was there, and that's why they're calling it this missing case, the fifth crime against peace.
A crime against peace specifically. I think that's really interesting framing.
Yeah, so war is a crime against peace, right? And other crime, the crime of aggression. So, yeah, so there's a definite linkage, and I think that we'll see it more and more with greater pressure put on scarce resources. And so all the conflicts we're seeing in the Middle East and Syria could arguably be connected to environmental degradation, which, you know, could potentially be an ecocide.
Well, I can think of a dozen cases just off the top of my head of exactly the same effect, with the drying of a river that used to run year round, leading to massive displacement of people, loss of livelihood, but huge impacts on the environment. So it is the tip of the iceberg.
I also imagine there'd have to be something about, like, if I'm understanding your question correctly, maybe there'd be something about like political philosophy and what the role of the nation state is in terms of focusing specifically on war and violence in something like the Rome Statute, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm misinterpreting.
So there's something to be said for the responsibility to protect, which is a like construct within IR theory, but ever since it was last employed to oust Gaddafi in Libya, it's taken a major step back on the international scene, because now the debate is, well, you guys attempted to act internationally on the responsibility to protect, and it has created a more unstable and like a costly situation for the Libyans in the long run. And so there's the whole, it is as a concept been severely deflated at the international level.
So I just want to make sure that David has time to share with us the case in Ecuador, because it's really interesting.
Okay, let's run this one through then, yeah? Here we go. Let's move this down, if I can get rid of this again. I've got this problem here. Come on. This is a, oh, hang on. I can make this a bit bigger, can't I? Hang on. Where am I? Here. Okay. Let's get this out of the way. So this is the Cordillera del Condor in southeastern Ecuador. And this is a open cast copper, gold, and molybdenum mine, which is potentially going to devastate the area. So here we've got a schematic here showing the tailings dams. The problem here are the tailings dams. Here is one here, and on my next slide, we're going to see. Can you keep the dogs quiet, please? Do your best. Here we have a second dam. You can see the first tailings dam here. It's called the Kimi Dam. Here's the second dam. With the dam itself, it's going to be here. This will be 63 meters high. This will be 270 meters high. The highest tailings dam ever built in the world. I've got here a map showing the damage which will be caused when these dams break. We have raised a case in the Constitutional Court of Ecuador using the rights of nature And our expert, who is Steve Emerman, who's been checking this out for some time, about the last 10 years, he estimates that these dams will inevitably collapse, and the first tsunami of toxic waste will kill all life in the rivers flowing down here in the initial surge of 350 kilometers. Here I have a slide showing actually what this means. Here we have a larger map. We go into the river Marathon, and then this flows into the Amazon River itself. This is the first tide of inevitable and irredeemable destruction of river systems. The secondary waters will go at least twice as far. They'll be here. They'll be flowing down through a runoff of something like 2 to 3 tons per square meter falling on these mountains, washing through these river valleys and washing this toxic waste down into these rivers with heavy metals, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, killing and causing a biodiversity accumulation and a slow cancerous death of everything in its path. This is fairly heavy duty. This is a picture taken in 2018 of the dike, the first part of the building of the Kimi Dam, which is due to be 63 meters high. Here's a closer picture of this. This is being built at, in Steve Emerman's words, at the angle of, at a critical angle, an angle of criticality, and it will collapse as soon as it is filled with tailings. The construction is earth and stone. The critical angle is 1 meter horizontal to 1 meter vertical. This is very much, and so this just gives you a bit of a schematic on how this dam building works. So we've got what's called an upstream method here, where this is the line of the dam. This is a 45-degree angle, which is the critical angle. And then each level, this is a new level, for instance, is built on tailings here. The tailings which are going to be put in these dams are not as dry as they need to be to ensure the structural integrity of the dam. And so what will happen is that we'll get what's called piping running through here, which will come up to the side of the dam, and the dam will collapse. And in Steve's words, if this design is continued to be used and dam building continues, a mouse sneeze, in his words, will cause this dam to break. This is a picture of the river valley where the bigger dam, remember I talked about that smaller dam in terms of coming across the valley. This will be 260 meters high, and this will inundate this whole area running behind here. This is being built at an angle of 1.5 horizontal to 1 vertical, remembering this is the highest dam in the world, and this dam will inevitably collapse through excess water running down, through landslides. You can see how this land slips here, how it slips here, which will cause overtopping of the dam, through internal erosion, or through earthquake. It's susceptible to all forms of tailings dam collapse. And this dam will produce 94 million tons of toxic waste, which will form a tsunami running down those river valleys, which I showed you. This is a schematic of this Tundaimi Dam. So 260 meters high, once again, working on this upstream type of construction, which is cheaper. We have less solid material, and it is illegal now in Brazil after the last dam collapse, and it is illegal in Chile because bottom line is they are dangerous. So we have here the statistic. Tundaimi Dam, 260 meters high, containing 390,000 million cubic meters of toxic waste. An estimated spill would be 94 million cubic meters, traveling in a tsunami of poison for 350 kilometers. This will be the biggest tailings dam break in the history of tailings dams. The last biggest one was the Fundao Dam in 2015, and that was 34 million tons. So we're looking here at a disaster on a scale that has never been seen before. We talk about extreme risk. The category of risk includes the probable deaths of more than 100 people, the large loss of critical fish habitat, and the impossibility of restoration or compensation in kind. So this is the end of Steve's summary. The failure of the tailings dams in the Mirador mine is inevitable, and the consequences will be extreme. Once again, I just bring to your attention, here is this is the River Zamora running into the River Santiago, into this main tributary of the River Amazon, going directly down into the River Amazon. I just put this here because this is the case which we've put together, and therefore myself as a British citizen, my passport expert in the United Nations, and we are asking for an injunction to stop the building of these dams because the situation is critical, immediate, and must be stopped now. To give you an idea of the size of the case, well, in terms of pages, it's 36 pages, and we are using directly the rights of nature as written in the Constitution of Ecuador, and we will be the first case which will clearly define the precautionary principle. So in this case, we do have some leverage. We have got some leverage, and this case is now pending in the Ecuadorian Constitutional Court. We can't call it ecocide. We have to work with the existing constitution and get that constitution codified in order to get an injunction on those tailings dams so that we avoid what is potentially the greatest disaster that will ever have been seen in terms of tailings dam destruction and destruction of the upper Amazon basin and its biodiversity. Okay, so that's a quick talk on the Mirador mine. Okay, any comments, any questions?
Are any of the, this is Peter Brown, are any of those companies doing the mining, or are any of them Canadian?
Okay, it's one company, it's a Chinese company, it's Chinese Railways and Tongling Construction. They're national Chinese companies. They've so far invested $1.2 billion, and they look to extract $220 billion. And the money from this mine comes to pay off the national debt owed to the Chinese by Ecuador.
Okay, thank you.
David,
Yeah.
I'm just curious, would you mind to tell us a little bit about the process of when you bring a case to the Ecuadorian Constitutional Court? What's that like? What's the time frame?
Yeah, okay, I'll give you a little bit of a history of this. I know Julio Prieto since about 2012, and I met him last year at an international symposium for the rights of nature in Quito. And then I met him in the United Nations in New York, because I get kind of invited to General Assembly as being part of this UN group. And also Julio was interested in this case here. So we were in communication quite a lot. I said, hey, Julio, is there any way we can bring this case, can we create a case around this Mirador mine? So he looked at it, scratched his head a bit and said, you know, I think we can. I think it's under rights of nature. Now, he wrote the book to the Constitutional Court explaining how to codify rights of nature. So he's very definitely our man. And he also worked on the Chevron case with Pablo Fajardo, who is also our lawyer, who took Chevron for $18 billion, which they have not paid. So we have two strong lawyers, which is essential. And I was able to bring the case because under the Ecuadorian Constitution, any member of the human race has a duty to protect nature. So we put it together. I was able to bankroll it. But this is the most difficult thing, is bankrolling. If there's no money, we cannot get things moving. But as luck would have it, I had enough money in my bank. I'm now empty to be able to start this case. So starting a case, number one, we need to find a good lawyer. Number two, we need to be very clear about the constitutional concepts as laid down in Ecuadorian constitution, and off we go. And so we have off we've gone. Does, okay.
Thank you.
This seems to be a case where you need good lawyers, but also some pretty good technical experts, because I assume the Chinese company and whoever, and if they've got an engineering firm, are saying, well, you're completely wrong about the critical angle and all that. This is proven technology. This is the most environmental tailings pond construction ever done, and it will last forever. I mean, I assume,
you are
isn't
right.
it?
You
So
are
how,
right.
So it seems it's very interesting as a Ecocide case, because it's really all about risk.
Well, we're talking about, under the Canadian Dam Association, this dam represents extreme risk. Under the Canadian Dam Association criteria, we have low risk, medium risk, high risk, and the highest risk is extreme risk. This fits the criteria of extreme risk. Under the Canadian Dam Association, Steve Emerman, who is our main expert, is vice chairman of the Worldwide Tailings Dams Failure Board. So he is the man who writes articles, gets interviewed by the Wall Street Journal and so on after this last dam break in Brazil. He is a world expert, acknowledged, known, and it is, you are quite right, it is essential to have good expertise. We also, yes?
Oh, just when you, in terms of answering this, I was wondering if you could also discuss whether the court will have its own independent experts on that issue, because that seems to be the fact finding there is going to be very important.
It's going to be up to the Chinese company. It's going to be up to the Chinese National Railways and Tongling Construction in order to bring their witnesses to counter our findings. Our findings are pure engineering. They're absolutely pure engineering, and that's it. You know, it's just that. It's what's called data. It's accepted engineering data. These dams will break. Inevitable.
Okay, it's just to close off that point, and then I'll move on, or I'll stop. But just that some courts, in very technical cases like this, engage their own expert. So they have the parties each have their experts, but in order for the judges who are not necessarily experts, well, typically are not, they will have their own technical experts. I just was wondering if that's something that's possible in this legal system.
Well, that's a fair point. Also, we need to take into account, rather similar to the Texaco case and the Chevron case, Ecuador had no experience of oil exploration, which resulted in 18 billion gallons of toxic waste in the Amazon and northeastern Amazon and the destruction there. In this case, Ecuador has no experience of mega mining. This is the first giant scale mega mine ever under construction in Ecuador. So they have no experts. They have no expertise. It's never been done before.
He mentioned something about the Shuar. So is the Shuar tribal going to be affected if that happens?
Yes, they will be. There are 70 villages in the immediate area of the dam. The small village of Tundaimi is underneath this 260-meter high dam. They will be destroyed. The communities will be wiped out. There will be more than 100 deaths.
Matt, did you have a question?
Oh, wait. Yeah, thanks.
Anyone from McGill? Emil? Oh.
Well, I think we are I mean, if you try to imagine the scale of the disaster, it's like, I don't know, you need new words to describe it.
I know, that's my difficulty.
It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming. And I just wanted to really thank you for sharing this information with us. I was not aware about this case being in play. And I think it's, for many of us who are interested in questions of law and ecology, I think it's a very important opportunity to learn about these efforts. And so I just wanted to thank you for sharing this with us. This information is very important, very crucial for our learning, but also, at least in my case, like invite me to come up with new language to make sense of the extent of destruction and hope, I hope, at some point in thinking about this. You know, it's very sad. It's very sad and, yeah, depressing, but also, and this is just a personal note because, I mean, I think we need to share also those stories. And personally, because I work in the Amazon, actually along the lines of the Putumayo River, knowing about how this waste might be going through the Marañón and then up to the Putumayo, it's affecting directly people that I care about. So I think the personal connection to cases, to the law, also matters to foster change. So thank you for this.
Thank you. Yeah. Also, I was asked to start to work on this by shaman from the Shuar. We've had shaman from the Shuar visiting my home here since the turn of the century. And in 2012, and also I've been out to Ecuador, stayed with my friends in Ecuador, in the Shuar. And in 2012, I spent 3 months in the jungle and also up and down to Quito to see exactly what was happening. And this, therefore, I am passionate about both this case in Ecuador and this case here, because in both cases, these are my friends. And if I can do anything to help my friends and also the environment, then I'm passionate about it. And I think this is what is necessary in all ecological work, is to be passionate. If we don't have passion, we are not going to get very far. And when we see a case like this Mirador Mine case, you're absolutely right. It's about wording it. I don't know if you read the article I wrote for The Ecologist. I worked with Nick Manon on that one. He's good. And so to look for resonance with the people, look and see, because we don't have a chip in the head to understand the largeness of this. You've got it because you're familiar. And thank you for that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, David. I want to echo what Yvonne said so poetically, that we really appreciate you sharing the hard work and the commitment you have to these places, and really wishing you all the best. We say in French, courage. I don't know what you say in Spanish.
Adelante.
Adelante?
Mm-hmm.
Adelante.
Adelante.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to say something too before we break off. Okay. Yeah, just it's exemplary work. It's so moving and so thorough, and it sets a high bar for all of us who love this planet and care deeply about it as you do.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And it's been a pleasure being with you, and thank you guys.
We're going to take a break, and then we're going to go into our mock trial activity. So David, you're welcome to stick around if you have the time. It should be interesting. There'll be 2 trials going on at once, so I'm not sure how we'll do it. We'll probably not have them televised, but we'll have what for. I suppose for Jeff and Peter and David, yeah, we can decide which rooms to join.
Okay,
so
great. I'll keep myself patched in. Yeah.